must be a new pandemic coming. Time to rob the bastards. So, Leprechaun came out in 1993 and it stars a very young Jennifer Aniston and Warwick Davis. And before I even get into the movie, I hope you're all having a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. I hope you're all getting pissed drunk and I hope you're all safe. So, that's it. Let's get into the movie. So, the first time I encountered the Leprechaun franchise was many years ago. I was a kid, and I was actually trying to record a different movie. It was, I think it was Hellraiser. I think it was back in the day. Remember whenever you had the VHS and you had the blank ones? Yep, these ones. And you put them in and you recorded whatever TV was on. You looked at the guide. Remember, you had the guidebook. So I thought I was recording Hellraiser, and I did. I missed the first 5 minutes for some reason, but it recorded. And then because we were away that night, it kept on recording. So it accidentally recorded the next movie that was afterwards, and that was Leprechaun Back to the Hood. Of all movies, right? So I remember watching Hellraiser, and then I went, whenever it finished and the credits came up, I went into the kitchen to get, I don't know, something, make a sandwich, came back in, and that was on, Leprechaun. And I remember being fascinated by it, and I thought it was a comedy. I mean, by this point, pretty much it is a comedy as the franchise went on. But that was my first introduction. I've only seen bits and pieces of this original movie. So this is my first proper sit down and full watch of the first movie from start to end. And what did I think of it? Well, first we'll get into what I did like about it. What I did like about this movie was the simplicity of the story, the plot, it starts off with an old married couple. The husband comes in with a big funky white suit, and he tells his wife a story, a tale of how he found gold, how we're rich. Now we don't take one last look at this dump of a house of ours because we're rich. And you slowly realize that he stole the gold from a leprechaun. A not so nice leprechaun, and basically scares his wife. Leprechaun scares his wife. She falls down the stairs, passes away, and and he's like taunting. And what's really cool about him was Leprechaun, the character himself, was how he could imitate voices. I thought that was really cool. I never copped that on. And, again, the story is simplistic. So eventually the husband, he manages to knock the leprechaun out, puts him in a box, closes the lid, and he gets like a 4-leaf clover, puts it on top of it, on top of the lid, and that is what keeps the leprechaun in the box. But he then dashes the place with gasoline, and as he goes upstairs to light the match, he has a stroke. So unfortunately, that happened, and Leprechaun is in the box. So, fast forward to 10 years, where you have a young Jennifer Aniston and her character playing her father, who have, taken over the house. They bought it over, and they're trying to renovate it, unaware that in the basement is the box with the leprechaun in it. So, when I say simplicity, that sets up the entire movie. So the leprechaun still hasn't got his gold back, still on a killing spree, and they let him out of the box by accident, and he just causes chaos. It's really simple. It isn't that, there isn't like 100 things you need to focus on. It's simple, and it works. And the other thing I loved about this movie was the obvious. Warwick Davis's iconic performance as the Leprechaun. Now, I've only seen this and bits and pieces before, and this, and Back to the Hood, which I can barely remember. It's been such a long time ago since I've seen that movie. But already, I cannot imagine anybody else playing the Leprechaun. I know that the latest Leprechaun movie is a different actor playing the Leprechaun, so I have no idea how that plays out. But I just can't imagine anybody else doing it. He has this charm about him. He has this charisma. He has the wit. He has the voice. He has the laugh. The menacingness. The sinistering. Is that a word? Fuck knows. But but it was so cool. And originally, fun fact, did you know that this movie, through midway production, was intended to only be just a family friendly child's kind of movie? I know, right? It's not until near the end of production when they realized that they actually did want to take it to a full on horror movie road that they started to go back after the movie was near enough done and done a lot of reshoots. And they added in gore, blood, proper like slaying of people, necks being broke, pogo sticks. That was a brilliant scene, by the way. So yeah, that's a fun fact. It was originally intended to be a family-friendly movie, but midway through production, they decided to do retakes and make it an actual horror movie. Good fucking choice on their part. Yes. So what else I liked about it was just the chaos. I like the characters were quite memorable for me. In my eyes, they were quite memorable. We have the two comedic characters, Ozzy and Alex. Strange, like you wonder how they became friends, but it's not unusual. You can imagine and think, okay, well, they're both always up to mischief, especially Alex. He's like the smart ass, you know, and then there's Ozzy, who's the more bit slow, but you know, he does keep Alex in his place anyway. He's like big brother or father. It's bizarre, but they do a great job at maintaining the comedic nature in the movie, along with Warwick Davis himself, who does amazing. He has funny ass one liners. I know they get better throughout the franchise. I'm very much aware of the weed line later on, but we'll get to that then. And yeah, the comedic style is pretty good. Sometimes it's a bit, but most of the time they carried on. They carried on pretty well. Now, let's get on to what I didn't really like about it. What I didn't really like about this movie was sometimes there was a bit of bad acting and some really bad choices being made that, like, for example, there is a cop and he gets his face, like, gouged, and there's blood, and he's running into the woods and the leprechaun's chasing after him and he's hiding. He hides behind a tree and you see the leprechaun in the background, like looking for him. Then he's like, "Oh, you want to play hide and seek?" He runs off somewhere. Then the cop's like waiting like, about 10 seconds, and then he goes to make a run for it. And as he's running, because the leprechaun's hat is just randomly sitting on the ground, instead of just running past it saying, "Fuck this, I'm falling for that shit," he stops slowly in a big, wide open fucking area, goes down, picks the hat up slowly, and then the leprechaun's jumping out behind him throughout all the trees. Like, "I'm over here, I'm over here." And instead of just running, the only weapon he has is like a stick. throws the stick while the leprechaun's behind the tree, so the stick goes that way, while leprechaun's here behind the tree, and now he's unarmed. And then he decides to run. And he runs like 5 seconds before he lies down on the ground out of exhaustion, as if he ran a fucking mile. Dude, you just ran around the fucking corner, man. Keep running. You're meant to be a cop. You're meant to be fit. Oh, but you have that, and then you have the really cool scene which Leprechaun lands on him and snaps his neck. Really cool shit. I really like that scene. That was cool. And then there's other scenes that annoyed me, like whenever the guy shoots the leprechaun, he goes into the bush, he lands on the bush, and then after the guy gets his leg caught in a bear trap, and he gets up after that, and he looks over, and from where we saw the leprechaun last landing on the bush, whenever he gets up, clearly the leprechaun isn't there. So what does he do? Don't see the leprechaun in the bush. So he takes his gun and just starts shooting about fucking 6 rounds. Wasting ammunition instead of making sure that it was in the bush before you shoot. He's just randomly shooting, wasting ammunition that you need, especially if you're protecting, 3 other people. So really dumb decisions like that, which kind of annoyed me. And just every now and again, the acting was took a nosedive. But apart from that, that's just me nitpicking, I think every horror movie, especially from the 90s, 80s, 70s, all have a bit of that one character that's like the acting isn't, but it's fine. Does it ruin the movie? No, absolutely not. But you do get scenes where, like, that didn't really make sense. Like, whenever the Jennifer Aniston's character goes to find the old guy at the beginning that had the stroke, because it's been 10 years since, and he's been in, like, a home or, like, place. And she goes in, and obviously it's the leprechaun sitting there dressed up as him, and then suddenly she goes in the elevator, and like he just comes through. The old man comes through the ceiling, and he's just hanging there. Just like, why did you come through the ceiling? Where? When did this happen? I would have loved to have seen like a scene where the old guy is sitting there and helpless, and then suddenly sees the leprechaun come back in and see his reaction to like, holy shit, you're out. That would have been a really cool scene to show. If they had done it right, it could have been emotional. If if they had reminded him of his wife's unfortunate demise, and he knows the end's coming for him. But no, we're just showing the scene where he comes through the ceiling of the elevator, and you're like, what the fuck? And he just lives long enough just to tell her to get a 4-leaf clover, put it on him, and then kill him. That's the only way. This is like, right, okay, right, sure. That's timing for you, huh? What a weird world we're in. Now, there was probably just nitpicks, like an awesome, awesome movie. But what is my favorite scene? Well, of all the really cool scenes in this movie, and there are some really decent scenes, some good cinematography, like the darkness, and you see like only the light is like on the leprechaun's face just a little bit, and you see like the eyes. Really cool stuff like that, while he's in the box or pretending to be a cat, then bites the guy, and you see him in the tree like. But my favorite scene was it was in the beginning with the old couple and this box you see opening. And it's just dark, but you see like a bit of wood, and you see the box opening. Then you just see these two red eyes just looking up. That shot, I love that shot. That was probably my favorite shot. It was the coolest shot. It was like, holy shit. So that was my favorite scene. It's subtle. It's not as big as like him being blown up at the end or the really awesome melting effect, which was a really cool effect, by the way, at the end. But I just loved it. It was subtle and it was creepy. Sometimes subtle is creepier than over the top. Just saying. So, overall, would I recommend this movie? Yeah, I would. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great movie. I've been watching, after I watched this movie, I was on YouTube and I was watching like clips of Warwick Davis, like in interviews, and like he still does the voice, even to this day. He can still do the Leprechaun's voice. And you can tell he still has fun doing it. So I really love that. And what annoys me also is I know that Jennifer Aniston despises this movie. She doesn't acknowledge it. If you mention a door, she'd probably walk right past you, slam the door, and leave you in an empty room. Like, what? Which is annoying because this was practically the movie that really shot her to stardom. And then because after this movie, she landed the role of in Friends, and we all know how successful that was. So I wish she would sort of just sit down and say, you know what, maybe I don't like the movie, but I appreciate what it did for my career. Should always remember where you come from and be thankful, in my eyes anyway. But yeah, I would totally recommend this movie. I would probably give it, I'd say 7.5 out of 10. You know, the nitpicks hold it back for me, but that's only my personal opinion. 7.5 is still a good score, so I totally recommend it. And yeah, can't wait to review the rest of the franchise, especially the new ones that doesn't have Warwick in it. That's fascinating. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I wholeheartedly appreciate it. Now I appreciate all of you. And yeah, as always, don't kill anyone. All right, so by the look of the Irish.